Hello, my name's Tony Adams, and this is the Sporting Chance podcast. And today, I've got Chris with me.
Brilliant, thanks, Tony. Well, I want to go back to the start, really, and where I feel this potentially started to arise from, and this was as an 8-year-old boy. My mum decided one day to just up and leave the matrimonial home, leaving my sister with my dad. And I guess it left me quite an angry child. I went through my childhood and into school, not really wanting to be there, getting kicked out of classes, only really interested in sport, and that kind of materialised there into lashing out at my sister, treating her with disrespect. And as I think about it, she was only really trying to treat me or be a mother-like figure to me that I was missing. And I just, as I said, treated her with utter disrespect and went through my childhood just winging it, not being present, just anger, full stop, really. And so that brings me on to a 18-year-old boy. And this is where the gambling started. It started very much like it did for everyone, I guess, going down the bookies with my mates on a Saturday, placing an accumulator, the odd 10, 20 quid in a roulette machine. But I kind of identified straight away that this did give me a buzz from the word go. Kind of left the bookies with excitement, and I'd be always checking my bet slip after football on a Saturday to see if I'd won straight away. And this kind of is where it started, and then it moved on. And on my 18th birthday, I had a significant amount of money saved from one of my dad's mum to go towards, I guess, what would have been potentially a first property in time or my first car. And within about a month of having the money, I'd spent it all. I was at college at this time, and I was still going down the bookies at the weekends with my good friends before football, but I was doing it midweek as well. I'd get home from college and I'll be down the bookies. No one would know about these necessary visits to the bookies, but they knew about the Saturday's occasions. And it started off very much 10, 20 quid here or there. And sort of as it progressed through, I always thought that I could chase this money back because it was such small amounts, and I'd get this money back and then I would leave it alone, kind of thing. That was the mentality I had. And you'll hear that a bit as my story went on. But as I wasn't playing cricket at this time, I was at college. This was the only source of money I kind of had. I had no other income, no other work. So my dad was consistently asking me, like, had I been spending this money? What was I doing with it? And I was just openly lying, saying I had the money. But as time went on, a couple of months down the line, I thought, well, shit, I'm stuck here. He keep asking me, I'm going to have to tell him. So I sat him down and I told him, and he was absolutely distraught. His mum had obviously saved this money up for a period of time to help me kickstart life as such, I'd imagine. And to my arrogance, it hit me when he first was speaking to me, telling me off all the natural things as an 18-year-old boy, but I quickly got over that. Oh, your dad's telling me off, I'll move on now. And then swiftly after that, moving into 19, I got my first professional contract. And this is where my mindset started to change. My money was now my money. I earned it, so I could do what the fuck I wanted with it. I could spend it how I wanted. I could spend it on gambling if I want. I could spend it on living. In my head, it was mine, and I could do what I want with it. And cricket got quite successful for me straight away. I got into the first team in my first professional year, and we actually went on to win 2010-2020. I played every game in that season. I was gambling my money every month, and with winning trophies becomes winning prize money. And October 2010, I remember it to this day, the 28th, I sat up till the early hours of the morning. I think it would have been 1, 2 or 3 o'clock, just checking my account every 5 minutes, waiting for this money to bounce into my account, with all the intention of, this is where I'm going to come clean. I'm about to get 10 grand into my account. This is going to be a deposit for my first house. All those kind of thoughts. Had all these visions of what I was going to do with this money. I had visions that I was going to gamble some of it for sure. And actually it was as soon as the next evening. My partner at the time was down, and a couple of couples were also present, and we were going to go on a night out to celebrate the season. We've had this money. We're 18, 19-year-olds. We're going to go and celebrate. And I made up a story that I wasn't feeling very well. I didn't want to go on this night out because I was ill. I think they kind of sensed that I wasn't, and they were egging me on to come, but I stuck to my guns and I was ill because in the back of my mind, all I had in my head was I wanted to go at it. I had this significant amount of money that was now present and there at a click of a button that I wanted to gamble it away, or gamble to, I guess, to get that buzz that I soon felt from gambling at that early age. So anyway, they went off on their night out, and I had text messages from my partner throughout the evening. She was saying, "Are you all right?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm still up. I can't sleep because I'm ill. All the time I'm at it, and I'm on the roulette on William Hill or Bet365, whatever it was at the time." And sort of as time went on, it was getting sort of more 3, 4 in the morning, and I was sensing that they were going to come home. I'm still up at this stage, and I'm still at it. And I just remember the utter madness. I think at the time I'd only transferred about 500 quid into my account, and I was up 4 or 5 grand at one stage, and loving life as you are. And I'm thinking, oh, they're going to be home soon. I'm gonna stop there and call it a day. But anyway, the aggressive nature of the gambling got worse, I think, because I realised they were coming. All I had in my head that I wanted to win more quickly. And within the space of about half an hour, I was about 5 grand down and almost inconsolable. I couldn't understand what I was doing at this time, but weirdly still loving what I was doing. The feeling of, even though I'd lost money, it was still quite intense, and in a sad, weird way, I quite enjoyed it. But anyway, woke up the next morning, and again the stinky thinking comes in, and I think, well, I'm going to book a holiday this morning. First thing in the morning for me and my partner. I'm going to book a holiday. I'm going to cover up everything by booking a holiday. She's never going to know. She never checked my account or anything like that at this stage anyway. But I just, in my mind, felt like I needed to hide it up somehow. And then if I spent the rest of that money gambling, then I took her on holiday. That was kind of my mindset. I had a few years gambling at this stage. I went on to spend all of that prize money without a shadow of a doubt within 3 or 4 weeks of after receiving it all, up and down at various stages. And for a few years, gambling was rife in my life. It took over to the extent that I wasn't treating myself properly. I wasn't eating properly. I wasn't in any debt at this stage, but every time I got to £0 early on the month, I would not pay my rent, or I'd find ways of delaying the process of paying things to be able to continue the thrill of gambling. As I said, I wasn't looking after myself, wasn't eating properly. It was just any excess money I had was to gamble. In 2012, this is a stage that started to get really bad. I even remember it interfering with my career. I remember playing a T20 in 2012, and for those that don't know T20, you field for 20 overs, and I remember walking off the field not having a clue of what had just happened. All I had in my mind for those 20 overs, which was about an hour and a half, was if my bet was winning that I'd placed before I went out there. And I could not wait to get off the field and check what I was doing. And the whole 20 overs was just oblivious to me. It was quite scary, actually, to feel like that. I'm playing there in front of 10,000 people, and I'm not even present. They're coming to watch this professional cricketer do his job, and in what looks to them that he is, and in his mind, he's most definitely not. And again, with being a professional sportsman comes the ups and the lows. In 2012, we won the one-day double. So not only had I won the T20 in 2010, I had a significant amount of prize money. In 2012, I had doubled it, essentially. I was getting, I think it was almost close to 15 grand into my account on October the 28th, 2012 this time. Same kind of theory. Woke up in the early hours, didn't necessarily gamble it that night, but I had plans with this money. Plans what I was going to do with it. But at this stage, gambling for me was very much a financial issue. In my head, I didn't think I was screwed up. It was all financial. If I could get to a place where I was level or happy, I always said to myself, I'd stop. I can stop. It's a piece of piss. I can stop whenever I want, and then I'll move on with my life. But as you can imagine, that 15k went pretty quickly. And then with that, then came the first signs of debt. Loans, credit cards, overdrafts, anything you can imagine. I'd exhausted it. That's when I first reached out, really. It was the early stages of 2013. I reached out to the Professional Cricket Association, and they sent me up to London to participate in counselling, because I identified that I thought I had a problem, but as I'll allude to later, I was admitting I had a problem, but I wasn't willing to accept I had a problem. And you'll understand that more as we go on. But So I went up to London. I was doing these sessions, and they worked for a period of time, but I was very much in the mindset that, did I really want to stop? I was going to these sessions, I was listening, and I was doing what was asked of me, really. They told me that to move on and to get well, I would need to open up, um, admit that I had an issue to people, and by telling people, they felt like it was going to release me and give me a platform to get well. So anyway, in 2013, I sat all my teammates down, and my coaches, and I told them this issue I had. I got quite emotional. I think there was a sense of, I couldn't do this anymore, to me, but did I really want to stop deep down? I don't think I did. I wasn't ready to accept that I was an addict and I was going to have to live with it for the rest of my life. And I wanted to control me. I didn't want anyone else to control how I did life or did anything, with such to my ego, which in sport, I think there's a place for an ego, because you need an ego, I believe, to succeed, and you need a competitive nature. And that's potentially why my career has been semi-successful, even within the height of addiction, because the competitive nature that you need, but that competitive nature was completely transferring over into my gambling. My gambling was controlling me, and the ego was that I could do it all on my own and that no one was going to help me. And that was very much how it was. I was people-pleasing. I didn't really want to stop. But I sat them down, and I sat my dad down, told him what I'd been up to, spent all my prize money, spent every wage I had that month, every single month, got myself into debt at this stage. And looking back, it was probably the worst thing he possibly could have done, but he gave me a soft landing. He paid my financial debt off for me, which was great for me at the time. Of course it was. It was giving me a lifeline. Yes, I had to pay that money back, but he gave me a soft landing. And from that, I don't ever hold that against him, because that's what any family member would do. They did that. He didn't understand me. He couldn't understand why I was gambling. He had never gambled his whole life. And he just couldn't get it. And we sat there as we are now, and we were to and fro in, and he just couldn't do it. But anyway, he cleared my debt for me, and we started to set up a payment plan, and I would pay him back every month, and he'd check my account, and great, that was going to get me well. But anyway, as with talking about sport again, in December 2013, I had a serious knee operation. It enabled me to be non-weight bearing for 8 weeks. I was living with my ex-partner at the time. As I say, I was paying the money back, and my account was being checked. But because of the inability to get around, and I was in certain machineries in my leg for hours a day, I had to sit with myself regularly. And this happened for about 8 weeks. And this was the first sign that I really started to feel that, was I gambling to escape? I was sat on the sofa, I couldn't move, and I started to feel like I couldn't deal with my feelings and emotions. I still thought it was a financial issue, but it was different now. I felt like I couldn't go and act. I had to sit and I had to deal with it, and I had this urge to want to go and gamble, and it was so powerful, and I couldn't. But as is the nature of an addict, I found a way. Dad was checking my account. I was on crutches, wasn't allowed to drive. If I got caught driving, then I'd get banned because I was unable. I had an automatic. But anyway, I was trying to think of ways that how I could get around my dad checking my account, but being able to gamble to sedate how I was feeling, because I couldn't deal with sitting with myself for these 8 weeks and not being able to get around. And I thought a genius master plan one day was to, because my partner at the time I couldn't do the shopping or anything. I had a master plan that if I could somehow get some cash out, say that my partner at the time got the cash out to put it towards Sainsbury's, my dad was never going to question that. He wasn't going to question if it was me or my partner getting the money out. I just told him that I was unable. We needed money for some food shopping, so my partner at the time got the money out. But that wasn't the story at all. I got in my car. This happened on a few occasions. Drove down to local cash point, which at the time was two blocks down from the bookies, and I drew the money out and I gambled it. Utter madness, really, but that's where I felt safe. I felt safe in that bookies. I felt safe at home, knowing I had a bet slip in my pocket, knowing I shouldn't be betting when my partner was around me, and I was checking the bet slip when she went out the room to see if my football match was winning. But that was the first sign that I was starting to get slightly worried about where I was getting to. But again, not really wanting to do anything about it. And as 2014 sort of come around, I started to get more able. Obviously, my injury was getting better, but I kind of sensed that my account checking was getting eased up, because I was doing these periodic getting cash out and it wasn't getting questioned anymore. And I thought, oh, I'm out the woodwork here. Like, no one's checking anymore. Paid money back to Dad. He thinks I'm well. And why wouldn't he think I'm well? Because he hasn't got the mindset that I've got. But anyway, I gambled all through 2014, back to the same kind of process I was before, just gambling everything I had and more sometimes. And that's when I reached out again. At this time, I kind of knew I was fucked, but I didn't want the being judged. People finding out and having to go back and tell these people in 2013 I'd gambled again. Them judging me, telling me that, come on, just stop. Like, it's as easy as that to stop. What you're doing. All those kind of messages they were giving me were all things that I didn't really want to hear, but I thought I would hear. I didn't think it was ever going to be helpful things they were saying. I thought it was just going to enable me to run away more and gamble. But anyway, coming to the end of 2014, I had nowhere to live. I had no money. I was planning on, in March 2015, moving in with some friends, and I managed to persuade the cricket club if I could stay at the cottage at the ground. And there was no one living there at the time. It was rent-free. And I was counselling at the stage, but I was bang at it while I was counselling. I was back seeing the same guy up in London. So I thought I was doing the right things because I thought I was messed up, but I just couldn't stop. Any feeling, whether it was good, bad, or indifferent, I needed to gamble to make me feel okay with me. And when I was at the cottage and I was gambling every day, and this is when I started to get the self-destruction kind of thoughts, not necessarily suicidal thoughts as such, but thoughts such as, do I have a place here? Those, I didn't necessarily go to the lengths of thinking of ways that I could do it, but the thoughts started to arise. What's the point? Why am I doing this to myself? People will be better off with me not around because I keep causing them hurt, and all the horror stories that come with it. But anyway, in my mind, it was time to get well. In 2015, I moved in with a few friends and I thought I'd cracked it, to be honest. I was gambling, but I was gambling to a lesser scale like I was when I was 18. I was doing 20 quid here or there. I was paying bills. I was paying rent. I was financing a car at the time, but anything I had spare, I was still gambling. And I was happy with where I was at there. I wasn't going anywhere in my life. I wasn't saving any money, but I was quite content with where I was at in 2015 in the sense that I felt in control. Such to my madness, the 20 quid here or there, I was more than comfortable with. In 2015, I kind of started to meet my new partner, who I'm currently with to this day, and she was going off to New Zealand for 12 months, and we'd only been met 3 or 4 months, and I'm pretty sure that on occasions I was still gambling, but I was trying my very much best to not, because I'd met this new partner, I really liked her. I could see there was potentially a future there if I was to pursue down the line and continue to do the right things. But anyway, she went away in January 2016, and with cricket at this time, I hadn't played 4-day cricket for a period of 2 or 3 years because of my injury previously. It took me a long time to recover fully to be able to meet the demands of bowling 30, 40 overs a week. But anyway, it's mad now because somehow I managed to get myself fit in and amongst the madness of my thinking. But anyway, I got as fit as I possibly could, and the 2016 season came around, and I was in the team for the first game of the season. It was Championship cricket, and I ran into bowl, played day 1 and day 2, and I woke up day 3, and my right knee this time was extremely sore. It felt very similar to me of what it did back in 2013 Christmas time, and I was really worried. And anyway, I managed to strap up and continue to play that game, and then I played the second game of the year. And I was running into bowl and I was just collapsing in the middle of the wicket, and I was picking myself up and going back to my mark and doing the same again. And it got to a stage that I just couldn't do this anymore. And as you're probably sitting there guessing now, it was exactly the same issue as in my left knee 3 years previous. So there we go again. Yours truly was under the operation table, bedridden for 8 weeks. And this is where I really started to deteriorate. I was in my bed again on those kind of machineries, as I alluded to before, and my partner was away. The season was ongoing. I've already reached out and had counselling 2 or 3 times. I've got nowhere to go, was where my mindset was at. All my mates were playing cricket all day, every day, doing the thing I loved. And there was me in my bed in the last year of my contract. So October time, I wasn't going to play for that whole season. And I'd mapped out what had happened in my head, what was going to happen. I'd mapped out that this injury had come. And by this stage, I'd realised that this injury that I'd picked up was the one that stopped Freddie Flint off with his career. So I had all the thoughts that this was me. I'm done. I'm not going to play the sport I love anymore. I've essentially wasted. Yes, I've won trophies, but I've essentially wasted the first 5-6 years of my career not being present, doing the thing I loved, but not doing it to the full of my capabilities, I guess. And anyway, I was back in bed, and I only had myself this time. Had no one to lean on. Couldn't tell my family again that I'd cocked up, and all day, every day, all I wanted to do was sedate my feelings, was to gamble. I couldn't do anything else. I tried to do a business studies course that someone told me I should do to try and think of life after cricket, but I gave absolutely no effort whatsoever, because all I had in my mind was how I was going to get more money and how I was going to gamble. And at this stage, I really couldn't cope. My partner came back 6 months early, not because her knowing where I got to, because I hadn't told her anything, because we missed each other, I guess, and New Zealand didn't quite work out how she wanted to, so she come back early. And this is where I reached out one more time to the people I've been seeing up in London for counselling, and I couldn't do a period because I'd exhausted all my time. And actually, the person I saw had moved on at this stage, but he said that I could go and see him as a one-off to just try and get me back on the straight and narrow. I knew a one-off wasn't going to be enough, but I sat him down and I kind of told him how my life had become completely unmanageable, and that I just couldn't cope with, as I said, with good, bad, or indifferent feelings. And he said, you've got to tell someone. You've got to tell your partner where you're at. And I was bricking it, because this girl that I got this relationship with, yes, she knew I had gambling previously because I told her when we first met, but she didn't know I was back at it. And all the thoughts that she was going to end it and all those kind of things was very present. And I told her that I'd got into debt again and where I was at, and this time thousands of pounds again. And I kind of manipulated the situation with her, so I didn't have to tell my family. I told her that I knew what I had to do. I put down clearly what debt I was in, where I was at, how I was going to pay it back, the time frame that it was potentially going to take. But I didn't want to tell my family. I had already caused them too much hurt, and I managed, I guess, to manipulate her into a way in believing that's true. So anyway, that's how it went. She checked my account, but this time she checked my account rigidly. Almost every day she checked my account, and any money that I spent that raised awareness, I had to give her a reason or tell her what exactly that was. And I didn't use cash, and it worked for a period of time. And at this stage, I managed to pay the debt back, and then started to get some savings, which that was the first time in my life that I started to actually get somewhere in the plus. I couldn't get away with it because my account was being checked daily, and that was the mindset. And I had that mindset when Dad was doing it originally. But again, those same feelings came in. I wasn't ready to stop gambling. Ultimately, I hadn't changed. So I was feeling at some stage this was going to come back. And why wouldn't it? Because every time before, it come back to haunt me. And as time went on, I started to get savings, and I was close to thinking about potentially buying a house. So I was doing well in the sense of that, but there was a void, and that void was that I wasn't gambling. I was winging life. This dishonesty, all those kind of traits were all still present. And I had a master plan one day that to be able to buy a property, I realised you had to have a good credit rating. And to have a good credit rating, you need to improve your credit. So I had a master plan that if I was to get a credit card and be seen to be responsible and paying it back, then my credit rating would only improve, which would enable me in time to get a house. Which those things were true, but also the mischievous of underlying in the back of my mind was to know that this was another way that I could potentially get away and go and have a bet without being found out. So now I got this credit card, and this time it was only hundreds of pounds until I realised what I was doing, the hurt I was causing again, and I put my hand up and I owned up to what I was up to. And this time, it wasn't just Lucy, and she wasn't going to take the brunt herself. It was, no, you're going to tell your whole family what you've been up to again. So I sat my sister and my dad down, and I told them what I was doing, that I'd been back at it, and they just couldn't get it. They did not understand. Why do you keep doing this? Why do you keep hurting your loved ones? Just stop gambling. It can't be that hard. And I'm just sat there thinking, I'm trying to explain, but why would they understand? Because they're not me. That they can't relate to how my mindset is working, the thoughts and that are going through my head, the feelings and emotions that I couldn't deal with, so I needed to run away and gamble. And I was just trying to explain it, and I could see them slowly starting to get a gauge and understanding where I was at, but I always knew that they were never going to understand, and that's something that into recovery I've realised even more. But then I did a period clean again, and this is where I was really starting to think that this isn't a financial issue anymore, because I've got savings. The problem's got to be me, that I can't deal with life on life's terms. And anyway, I've got one more in Christmas, 2nd of December 2018 it was. It was 3 and a bit weeks up until Christmas. My account was still being rigidly checked. I had another master plan, would you believe, that I told my partner that I've got you something really nice for Christmas. Can you not check my account, because I don't want you to know what you've got for Christmas. you know, I want it to be a surprise. And this is when she said, yeah, sure, because she started to regain that little bit of trust in me. I was doing the right things here or there. But that wasn't my intentions at all. On this December the 3rd, 2018, which to this day is my last bet, I went out, I drew 20 quid from the cash machine. I went straight down the bookies, and it was the most intense feeling that I've ever felt in my life. The buzz, the adrenaline was incredible. It was everything that I ever lived for, was that feeling of I was about to go and do something mischievous. The buzz of taking a risk that I could potentially get found out. But I guess in time I started to realise that taking a risk is what I wanted to do. Anyway, I went in the bookies. I placed a four-fold accumulator, and I walked out the bookies, and there was a sense of the enjoyment and buzz had gone. I didn't even know if this bet was going to win or lose at this stage. Surely that was the main kick out of gambling, was potentially winning money. But for me, when the day I walked out of that bookies, I couldn't care if that bet won or lost. And actually, the adrenaline for me had just been completely sapped out of me from the act that I'd just done. That it was irrelevant if this bet was going to win or lose. And anyway, I got home, got through the front door. This bet hadn't even started yet, and I was just inconsolable. I was crying like a little baby, like a little 8-year-old boy, as I alluded to in the start of my. And I cried and I cried and I cried for an hour and a half. And that was the first time in probably 11 years of my gambling career that I really thought enough's enough. I wasn't only just completely hurting myself, I was hurting all my loved ones around me. Something had to change. Anyway, I rang my partner up, and this time was very different. She was numb to the point where actually she could believe what I'd done, because I'd done it 2 or 3 times at this stage. And I could evidently hear in her voice that she was stuck for words. She was really hurt. And at this time, I really thought that this was it. She's going to leave me. She can't do this anymore. And I, as I said, for the first time, felt like I need to do something about this and do something properly for everyone around me, but more importantly for me, because I can't keep living my life like this. I'm almost halfway through my career. I've got nothing to show for it. I'm hurting everyone around me. I need to grow up. And that's where I took the first step really into my journey of recovery. And I vowed to my partner that I was going to do everything that I possibly could. And I started paying for counselling sessions again up in London. It wasn't the same company I was seeing before. I found an external person who I'd been advised that was good. And I was paying a decent whack to go and see this person. And it was great to start with. They were telling me how the brain works, cognitive behaviours, when your addict's in charge and when you're in charge. And for a period of time, it did work. It was sustaining me from gambling. But it had become a period that, as it was going on and on, that I was telling this lady how I felt and she was giving me feedback, but it was becoming very evident to me that whatever I said, although she said she could relate, I couldn't feel the feeling that she could relate. So I kind of started to lose a little bit of interest, and it very much in my head was potentially going to go the same way as it always did before, that I would do a period, I would lose interest, and no one could ever get me, because if this lady couldn't get me, then no one's going to get me. So am I going to be close? And I felt like I was close. And actually, that's when March 2019, last year, when you came and done your talk, and in all honesty, that was the first time I'd heard of Sporting Chance, potentially because of the PCA, the Professional Cricket Association, was only new into the relationship with you guys, so that's why you hadn't been on the pre-season trip previously. But I hadn't heard about it, and as soon as you gave your story, my ears were pricked right up, and you told about what the Sporting Chance Trust was about, what it did, and I couldn't believe how local it was to me. It was 45 minutes down the road, and I called this lovely lady, and she answered the phone, and I told her where I was at and basically what I wanted from Sporting Chance, and she took in all of the information, and she got this guy to call me back. And we had a long chat, and where I talked about where I was at and where I wanted to get to, and he said, you need to go to a meeting. And I said, well, what do you mean you need to go to a meeting? And he said, you need to go to a Gamblers Anonymous meeting. And I said, oh, no, I don't want to go to one of them. And he said, why is that? And I said, well, for so many years, a few people have said to me, have you thought about going to a meeting? And my first response was, I don't want to go to a meeting. Didn't know who was going to be there, but the main reason why I didn't want to go was because I didn't want people to know who I was. I knew there was one in Southampton, but to my arrogance and I guess not knowing, I thought that if I walked into that room and someone knew who I was, affiliated with Hampshire cricket or whatever it might be, that it would get back to people. People would know what I'd been up to. So that was the main reason I didn't go. And anyway, I met this guy. His name's John. And again, you could say it's right time, right place, because he lived 20 minutes away from me. He went to a meeting in Chichester and Southampton. I chose the Chichester one because it was furthest away for the reasons I just alluded, but I was going to go to a meeting. And this, what I found out very quickly, was a big step. I met him outside about an hour before the meeting, and I was probably the most nervous I've ever been in any given situation in my whole entire life. To the extent at this stage I kind of had no hope. I thought I was going to go back to gambling at some stage. Who was going to be in this room? A load of lowlifes, or it wasn't for me. I was too big to be in these rooms. That's the mindset I had. And anyway, it forced me through the door, and we sat down, and the meeting started, and we sat in a circle, and there was anyone from a lawyer there to a dentist, and my eyes sort of, and I thought, right, okay, this illness doesn't just grabs some very intelligent people, and they all clap me. I thought, what are you clapping me? What I've been up to the last 10 years doesn't deserve someone clapping me for what I've been up to. But I very quickly got an identification. Everyone that was sharing their story or I could relate to in some kind of way. And I really felt like now at this given stage, I wasn't alone. There was other people out there that were like me. For so long, I thought it was just me. that has this issue, that was in this predicament, that couldn't get out of it. But there was 15 to 18 like-minded people in the same room, and I walked into that room with no hope, and I walked out with a significant amount of hope. That's where from there really the sporting charts started to take off. Saw a counsellor there who had been off alcohol for 20 years. I saw him every couple of weeks, and every time I sat with him, like we are now, and we talked about how I was feeling and the emotions and everything, that the reason I ran away to gamble, everything we've covered in the last year, I always felt like he knew where I was coming from. And then I've, over time, had this umpteen respect for this guy, because whatever he was telling me and whatever I was saying to him, he could understand. And that was massive for me. For trying 3 or 4 different versions of counselling before and not being able to relate, this was a huge step. And he told me about the 3 S's. He told me you need to go to meetings and you need to keep sharing. That's the first S. He said you need to find a sponsor and you need to do this program called the Steps. And I said, well, what do you mean this program? I've never heard of this program before. And he said it's a program of change. And trust me, for you to get well and to be okay with your feelings and emotions and yourself and be able to deal with life on life's terms, you need to do this program. And that's where I managed to find myself a sponsor. Again, you could say ironically, or right time, right place, or the hard work I've been doing, but he's also affiliated to Sporting Chance. And I very quickly learned that the sponsor was there to guide you through the process. For so many years, I tried to do it my way, and now my way was never going to work ever again. So this sponsor, and they sold it to me as you'd be on a bike with your sponsor through this journey. Your sponsor would be on the front and you'd be on the back, and you'd be pedaling because you'd have to put serious work in, but this person at the front would be guiding you. And I love the sound of that, because for so long it was just me on that bike trying to do it my way, and it never ever worked ever. And then from there, a few acronyms got thrown at me, and 2 that stuck to me to this day, and one was HOW. And I said, what do you mean HOW? And they said, well, HOW in recovery stands for honesty, open-mindedness, and a willingness to do whatever it takes to get well. And he said to me, I can almost guarantee you did do none of them in active addiction. And it opened up a can of worms in my head, and I kind of thought, well, yeah, I definitely wasn't honest. Definitely wasn't open-minded, because all I wanted to do was gamble, and I certainly didn't have a willingness to get well. So from that day onwards, I've tried to do those 3 things in every single aspect of my life. Occasionally I don't do them perfectly, but I quickly I quickly identify when I haven't done them, and I make amends straight away if I haven't been honest for whatever reason. And another one was fear. And they said fear in active addiction is fuck everything and run, which is exactly what I did for 10 years. I couldn't deal with life on life's terms. Any feeling and emotion that came around, I needed to run away and gamble to sedate that feeling. But in recovery, it was alluded to me as it's face everything and recover. And that stuck with me ever since that day, because that's exactly what I'm doing now. In the last 15 months, I've had difficult situations that have arisen. Things that back in the day I never would have dealt with. I would have gambled. And it's been hard, because in these 15 months, they say when you're in recovery, the best thing about recovery is you get your feelings back, but the worst thing about recovery is you get your feelings back. So for so long, I didn't feel, because I gambled to hide it. But now I have to sit with myself almost daily when something comes up, good, bad, or indifferent, that I've got to adapt and deal with. And it's challenging. This process isn't easy, but if you have that W in HOW, the willingness to do whatever it takes, that's kept me in good stead. And when things do challenge me or they do arise, I talk about it. I don't internalize it like I did for so long. I ring my sponsor, I share it at meetings. And the reason I share it at meetings is because they understand. I could go home to my dad and I could share it to him. He'd listen to me and he would appreciate me doing it, but he wouldn't know where I was coming from. Whereas these people, they do in meetings. So I was told I had to change. I had to take on this program, and just a little bit about the program. There's a couple of steps that really stick out to me, and that's the first step. Admitting we're powerless and our life become unmanageable. I think for a long time, while I was at it, I was admitting that I had a problem, but I was never accepting it. And that's why I always went back and relapsed. I couldn't accept that I was going to be an addict for the rest of my life. It's something that I'm going to have to deal with and arrest on a daily basis. So that was the big one, like realizing that I was powerless over this illness, and I had to hold my hands up and accept that I was an addict, and that was going to put me in good stead to move forward. And another step is step 4. It gave me a chance to repair fragmented relationships. I started to open up, go back into all of my life, which is essentially what I've shared with you today. Obviously missing out a few bits here or there, and it really felt like it was starting to release me when I did this step 4. I could make amends to my family, to how I'd been, to my loved ones, and just it gave me a sense that I'm on the right journey. It's going to be a hard slog, sometimes daily, but I was on the right path. And for me, doing my step 4, it's taken a lot of bricks out of my rucksack as such, and it's now enabling me to deal with life on life's terms much more. And gambling for me now, it is an option. I can go and gamble tomorrow easily, but now I have an option not to. For so long I didn't have an option not to because I couldn't deal with me. So saying no wasn't an option because I had to go and do it to make me feel like I had a place in my own mind, I guess. But now I have an option not to, and I have to wake up every single day, and I have to surrender every morning that I'm an addict, and that if I wanted to go and gamble, I could. No one was going to stop me, but that was enough to keep me off every morning. Daily surrender, do the right things. When things come on me, I own them, and I call people, and I've got nothing to hide anymore. I'm not scared. I'm not scared of who I am because I'm starting to feel okay with me. I like talking about my situation now because it gives me a sense of achievement of where I've come. And it just gives me a sense of power again, I guess, that I can control my own thoughts and feelings if and when they come present. And that I guess that I've got a place and like everyone else does to live a normal and safe life. But I'm going to have to deal with this every single day for the rest of my life and not get complacent.
You done, Chris?
Yeah.
You're in.
I think so. I'm sure there's a few things, but
I love hearing people's stories and identified with so much in there. I'm just going to pull out a few bits, if
Sure.
I may. And weirdly, it's all about the recovery part, really. And you seem like you've really got in the middle of recovery. And they talk about, and I really got that stinking thinking with you. You know what I mean? It seemed like you've been in your head a long time, and so was I. You know, and we say in my drug of choice was alcohol, and the stinking thinking gets you drinking. You know, and I can really identify with that. It's the thoughts and feelings. That's what we're about today. You know, and they only mention in one of the steps. They mention alcohol or gambling in step 1, and then they don't mention it again. You know, it's about us. You know, I know that very much I'm the problem. I'm the solution. You know, the disease is in me, not in the bottle. It's not in the bed. You know, and it's all that thinking, all that devious kind of stuff. You know, like I say, it wasn't my drug of choice. Alcohol was my drug of choice, but I had a bet in 87 KRC at the Derby, and I put a grand on it at 14-1. Won 14 grand in 1987, and I woke up the next morning without a penny. You know what I mean? It wasn't the money. You know what I mean? This was insanity. You know, and all that. We do some really bad stuff when we're sick, you know, and that's why I understand it being an illness, you know, because you would never have done that, you know, the deceit to your family, the people that you love, the new girlfriend, you know, that you wouldn't do that to them, you know. We're so trapped, we're so involved in those trying to figuring it out all ourselves, you know, master plans you called them, I think, you know, it's amazing, and all around that I got the identification. One sportsman talking to another sportsman, one addict talking to another addict. But the stuff around injury, you know, when I was injured, I've just had a knee replacement, been sitting myself for 3 months. You know, who'd have thought that I couldn't sit with myself for 2 minutes. You know, I was off down the pub and like you off down having a bet. You know, I couldn't sit with myself. You know, all those thoughts and feelings. You know, it's not. Well, so I really identified with that. Those periods of you know. And the trophies and the ego, you know, you very early on you got success. I got very early on, and it gets confusing because that drive and determination gets you to where you're at. It's all part of the same mixture. It's all part of that same kind of chemistry, and the ego. And a very serious point, it gets people not into that first meeting. And I really heard that first meeting, you know. Don't they know who I am? Yeah. You know, there's someone going to be... And the shame attached to all that as well because of the stuff that we've done. And they might find out I'm in debt. And they might find out that that T20 game, I couldn't really give a shit. You know, I'm worried about me bet. You know, I was worried about the pub after, you know, the beer afterwards. You know, I didn't want to be there. You know, but if these people find out all that stuff, you know, they're going to find out who I am, you know. You know, I'm not going to a meeting, but it's kept people, the ego has kept people out of the rooms and taken to the grave or in insanity. You know, it's very important to stress that point, you know what I mean? And this program is an ego deflating program. You know, it pierces that, and you're very humble to sit here and share your stuff is amazing strength. I see the power in it today. It's absolutely fantastic. And just by getting it up, and you mentioned the S's, I want to add one that you're doing today, and I'm going to finish on this. You know, the S's, sponsorship. You're bang on. I needed someone to show me the way. And that person for me was dignified, trustworthy. You know, he was a great guy, you know, that spoke thoughts and feelings and got it. The identification, he'd been where I'd been. He'd had the same thoughts and feelings and not had a drink, not had a bet, you know, that kind of sponsorship. I needed that. You know, you talk about the steps change. If we don't change, we go back to where we were, you know. You very much said that as well. Sharing, you've got to open your mouth. You know, it's been my secret. I can't shut up now. You know, I've got to remember this is your share and not mine. But, you know, just this stuff gets me 3. But I'm just going to have one at the end. It's 4 S's for me. So go back and tell your Spencer that. Service. And I think you've got to give it away to keep it. You know, and I think service is what you're doing here today. And it's very brave of you to come and share your story. And I'm very privileged to hear it, mate. And I wish you all the well. Keep around, keep coming back, as they say in the rooms. And God bless you, mate.
Thank you.
We're going to have a hug.
Love that.